Hey, what's up guys, Duct here, and today we're back with another video here on Hypixel Skyblock. And Dungeons is out, so we're going to be doing a class review of Mage. Now I plan to do reviews of the other classes soon, but we're going to start out with Mage. And I'm going to have timestamps for this video because it's going to be a little long, as everything in Mage is quite a bit, let's be honest. And I know I'm going to miss some stuff. Comment down below what I missed, so people that are looking for stuff that I missed, it's down below. And also, I do realize eventually, if like floor 6 is out or something, right now only up to floor 3 is out, some of the stuff is probably, most of the stuff is probably still going to be relevant, almost all of it. The only thing that won't be is probably the specific gear that is the best at the moment, or pretty good at the moment. It's probably going to be okay or decent in the future. But anyways, besides that, hope y'all enjoyed today's video, and let's jump right in. So let's talk about some of the special abilities that you get for literally just selecting Mage. So first of all, the passives. So the main thing in Mage is class passive Mage Staff. All your melee weapon attacks become ranged. Those attacks deal 121.2% of their melee damage. This increases by your intelligence, up to 15 blocks, after which damage is reduced. Also, you have another class passive, Efficient Spells. All abilities have a 29% shorter cooldown. So both of these are altered by, so Mage Staff is altered by your intelligence, so the percentage of the damage your melee does. So say you do 10,000 damage melee, that means you're going to do 12,120 damage from ranged attacks, which you just do by clicking, essentially the same way you would when you're normally playing, but instead it's a ranged attack, which is super cool in my opinion. Like, it's really awesome. And it's the main thing to do with Mage, but it's not the only thing. Efficient Spells, on the other hand, where we have a shorter cooldown, that is pretty good, because the abilities on Mage, they're good. Like, the Guided Sheep and the Thunderstorm, which are the Dungeon Stone abilities, so these are like the ultimates, I guess you could say. Well, okay, the Thunderstorm's like the ultimate, because it has a super long cooldown. The Guided Sheep is more like your special move. There we go. The Guided Sheep is your special move. Thunderstorm's your ultimate. Guided Sheep you get every 30 seconds, and it basically shoots an explosive sheep, and it does splash damage. Essentially similar to Bonzo Staff's balloons, which are really, really nice, and I have it, and it's awesome. It's basically similar to that, except you have it with any weapons. You could have it with a 50 Midas, you could have it with an AOTD, you could have it with an Aspect of the End if you want. You can have it with anything. And Guided Sheep it's pretty good ability. It's just damage. It's not the best ability in the game. Obviously, it's just a special ability. It's not like the ultimate. Also, the damage increases based on your mage level for the Guided Sheep, so if you're like Mage 25, you're going to be doing a lot more Guided Sheep damage than someone that's Mage 10, for example. Now, Thunderstorm. So Thunderstorm, essentially, it's a thunderstorm, and it deals damage on everything in a 10 block radius for 15 seconds, and that damage increases based on your mage level. So this can deal a lot of damage. Like, sometimes I can get thunderstorms into around 1,000,000 damage, and that's pretty good damage. Like, that's literally... That's a good percentage of damage, and I usually activate it when there's either a bunch of mobs, or if I'm fighting a boss or something. It's pretty effective on bosses. Now, as you can see here, there's a bunch of different levels within Mage. You can get all the way up to 25. This may even go up to 50. I'm assuming it does. Similar to, well, basically farming, foraging, all those, they all go to 50. I'm assuming this goes to 50. No one knows. No one's been Mage 26, so don't know that. Probably won't know that for a month. I think someone might get Mage 26 in a month. I don't know. Maybe, maybe. But as you level it up, you're going to gain Intelligence, Guided Sheep damage, and Fireball damage. And also sometimes you're going to gain cooldown reduction, which is great for, well, mainly Guided Sheep and Thunderstorm. I think that's all that will affect, and maybe your Ghost abilities, I'm not sure about that. But I think the main thing that affects is your Guided Sheep and Thunderstorm. And 1% cooldown reduction, it's decent. Also, you'll increase your Fireball damage, and basically each level you're going to gain more Intelligence, more Guided Sheep damage, occasionally more cooldown reduction, and Fireball damage. And that's basically all the way through. It'll just slowly increase how much you get, although getting each level is going to increase. Like, every time you try to level up Mage, it's going to cost more XP, so it's not like you can get if you think you got through Mage 1 through 6 like super quickly, getting to like, for example, 10 to 12, which is only half that many levels, is going to be multitudes times more XP to get to that level, if that makes sense. Although you are going to gain more guided sheep and fireball damage as you go, and I don't know how high it gets. If it goes past 25, you're starting to get a lot of guided sheep damage, but I imagine you're going to need it on those super tough levels. Also, as I mentioned before, ghost abilities. So these are not nearly as important, but essentially you have the ability to place a wall, which basically it can be useful in boss fights sometimes, or if like a shadow assassin's after your team and you already died, you could try and block off the shadow assassin so your team can escape. It's somewhat useful. It does take some practice to try and place the wall. Like, you have to time it pretty well and the right spot as well, so it's not easy to get a good wall, but it can be a semi-useful ability. Obviously your ghost abilities aren't meant to be great, and fireball ghost ability shoots a fireball dealing damage based on your mage level, so this is the fireball damage that you're getting in all these. So essentially while you're a ghost, you'll be able to deal more and more damage while you're dead. So it's somewhat nice to have. Alright, so now let's talk about some of the suggested layouts for mages. Now, this is only with what's currently out in the game, which is up to floor 3, so if you're watching this video after floor 3 is over, there may be other stuff you could consider wearing as well that I don't currently know about. So the layout that I use is a Necrotic Bonzo's Mask with 3/4 Very Wise Dragon Armor, and I have it all reforged, obviously, for it to be Very Wise to Wise, which gives me a good amount of intelligence, which the reason intelligence is so important as mage is because if we go back and look at the class passives, it is basically multiplying the amount of damage you were able to deal. So see, right now my attacks deal 121.2% of their melee damage. Now I think if I access this while I'm holding my Bonzo Staff, which would give me a lot more intelligence because of Heroic, and also Bonzo Staff just gives you intelligence, like, just generally. And also this would be higher inside a dungeon because Bonzo Staff at tier 5 stars actually gives me plus 600 intelligence when I'm actually in there, but let's say just this happening, just like equipping the sword instead. So now I'm doing 149.5% of my melee damage at a range, which is up to 15 blocks, which after that it does get reduced. So you kind of want to find a sweet spot in terms of range with mage, but typically you want to be semi-close, but have your like tank and healer take most of the damage. You can't really take damage as mage, so tank and healer, that's their job. But mage, you are a damage dealer, and your intelligence, the more intelligence you can get, the more damage you can deal. So this means your intelligence is rather important, and you can get intelligence leveled up by leveling up your enchanting and your alchemy, which I need to do if I'm going to continue maining mage. So the thing is, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue maining mage because I'm, like, from a content perspective, trying to play every class, so it's semi-difficult for me to say if I should put all my money into enchanting and alchemy. Yes and no. Yes, because it would help out a lot with my intelligence, which would mean I'll deal even more damage than I already can. The most damage I've dealt, I think, is 30 million on floor 3, which I thought was pretty decent, although I know if I had higher enchanting and alchemy, I could deal more. And at the same time, also, higher combat you have, the more damage you'll deal, like, to anything. Combat is, getting high combat, it'll be helpful with any class, no matter what. Same with foraging, just the additional strength is obviously very helpful. And do keep in mind, when you're playing dungeons, getting all your fairy souls, you should definitely do it. There are fairy souls inside the dungeons, but I would specify getting all the ones outside first. There are some inside, which I know TimeDeal is planning on making a guide on the fairy souls inside. That's not out as of the time of the recording of this video because he couldn't find, I think, 2 fairy souls that he is dying to find, and, well, they're kind of hard to find. Inside dungeons, you know, there's different rooms all the time, and you're not really sure where things are, but I've gone on a bit of a tangent. So anyways, let's go back to the gear. The reason I'm using Bonzo's Mask is, for one, the ability clowning around is very nice. If you die to, say, a Shadow Assassin, you have basically an extra life, and that is very, very nice. So instead of dying, gain damage immunity and 23.6 strength, which that amount of strength will increase as your dungeoneering level goes up, for 3 seconds and fully replenish your health. The cooldown and strength bonus you receive improve based on your dungeoneering skill level. This ability only works while in the catacombs. So if there's a future dungeon out that's not the catacombs, this won't work inside there, which by then I'm assuming I'll have much better gear than this, but per se, let's stick to this for now. Now, Growth 5, Prot 5, obviously you can throw Growth 6, Prot 6. I probably wouldn't suggest it. Necrotic Bonzo's Mask, it's not like the best item in the game. It's definitely very good though, and it's a second life all the time. Well, every 327 seconds. So if you die twice to a Shadow Assassin on floor 3, you're actually gone until your healer heals you. So that is a problem. But also, the 327 seconds will go down as your dungeoneering skill level goes up, so theoretically you could get that down to maybe 300 seconds, I'm not really sure, but you can get that down. Also, inside dungeons at 5 stars, it gives a lot of health and defense. I'm thinking about even using this on my tank setup, which my tank setup I'm planning to use, I'm trying to debate between using a 5-star heavy armor set, or like a 5-star heavy helmet, and using, the Bonzo's Mask. I'm not sure which one would be better. I think the Bonzo's Mask, so I'll probably have to go ahead and sell this again. And then I'm going to wear Perfect Tier 12, which I'm pretty sure is actually worse than 5-star heavy armor inside dungeons, so I may need to try and get more heavy, like having heavy leggings and heavy chestplate. We'll see. Hopefully don't have to, but I probably will have to do that, so that's gonna be, well, I don't know, it won't be that expensive. Really, it's not that expensive. But obviously perfect armor is gonna be great once you can actually make it into dungeon perfect armor. The problem is getting Catacombs level 30 So, yeah, that's the problem with that. But anyways, the main purpose of this armor set is for intelligence. As I said before, the intelligence increases the amount of damage you deal out of range, which is great. Now, the Bonzo Staff. The reason the Bonzo Staff is great is not just its ability and that it's a dungeon item. There's another thing. Its item ability, Showtime. You shoot balloons that create a large explosion on impact, dealing up to 5,565 damage for 60 mana. Now, this is 60 mana with Ultimate Wise 4. It's actually down to 50 when you're playing Mage inside dungeons, so getting Ultimate Wise 5 will make it even cheaper than that. I would advise getting Ultimate Wise 5. The problem is Ultimate Wise 5 is twice the price of Ultimate Wise 4. So, if you want it, you can get it. I may end up getting Ultimate Wise 5. Probably is worth it, but I'm thinking about going for maybe an adaptive set, which is a set that has some bonuses on every single class, like so you're able to play all the different classes somewhat decently. I don't think it's the best at any one class, although it does have probably the best ability of any of the abilities when it comes to intelligence. Oh, okay, here, let's go check out an adaptive set. So here's a piece of adaptive armor on the auction house. Yes, it can get quite expensive, and this is because it can get quite good. So the full set bonus is called Efficient Training. Every 5 catacomb levels, this armor piece gains plus 2% stats. That is very good, even though 5 catacombs levels is not going to come easily. So, but once you're like catacombs level 25, that's another 10% stats just straight up on your armor, which is great. It's not insane. Like, I don't think it's the best stat in the game or something like that, but I think it can be pretty good and can make a very good mage set. So the reason I'm saying that is because if you look here, you can get Necrotic on it for plus 120 more intelligence. It is a dungeon armor piece, so you can 5-star it as well. And the unique thing about this is whatever class you're playing will give you a different buff. So if you're Berserk, you'll get another 20 strength. If you're healer, you'll get 10% HP regen and 40 health. If you're mage, you'll get 50 intelligence per piece. If you're tank, you'll get 30 defense and reduced damage, taken by 5% for each piece you have equipped if you are hit by the same monster within 10 seconds. That is a bit complicated, but yes. So basically, if you have the full set enabled, you can get 20% less damage if you're hit by the same monster twice, I suppose. And also for Archer, you have plus 5 crit chance and 15 crit damage. Now, this should be applied per piece, but I haven't tested it since I don't have a full adaptive set. The Adaptive Blade, which kind of goes with it, although this is a legendary one that's been recombobulated, it basically does the same thing where it has different stats based upon whatever class you're playing. So Berserk, you'll get 35 strength and 5 speed. Healer, you get 20% HP regen and restore plus 5 HP per second to nearby allies. Mage, you get 200 intelligence, which is really good. Tank, you get 100 defense and 5 true defense. And Archer, you get 100 crit damage. Now, between Adaptive Blade and Bonzo Staff, I'm pretty confident that Adaptive Blade can deal more damage when you're, like, shooting with your Adaptive, like, if you're, like, manually left-clicking everything. Although, Bonzo Staff, you have the Showtime ability, which really does the majority of your damage when you're using Bonzo Staff. You're not that reliant on your left-click. You're mainly just constantly spamming right-click. Like, my intelligence when I'm using this is outside of dungeons is 1428. Inside of dungeons, I can get into the 3000 mana range. It's, basically you're constantly using Showtime ability. You're never not using it. And that's why it can make Bonzo Staff so good, at least right now. I'm sure there's going to be better weapons that come up in the later dungeons. But for now, Bonzo Staff is very, very good at its job, and I even use it when I'm playing Berserker, because Showtime does the majority of the damage. Like, yes, it would not be ideal to use this as Berserker. Well, actually, maybe it would be. You could maybe say that using this would be better than using a 50 mil Midas, because of just straight up, like, I've played a little bit of Berserker, see, I'm Berserker 7 because we have another mage in my group, and when I'm playing Berserker, I actually deal a good amount of damage. If we look here on floor 2, for example, I have 9 million Berserker damage. That's entirely from Showtime. Basically, when I did that, I wasn't even using my left click for Berserker. And I was using this exact same set. Like, I was basically playing Berserker as a mage, and it worked. I'm obviously not dealing as much damage as like possibly could be, but the good thing about this setup is I can play multiple classes. I can play Berserker, I can play Mage, I can even throw in Archer if I want to, but don't play Archer as Mage and then use Showtime. It does not count for ranged damage, so you won't get hit any milestones. So unless you're just trying to troll the Archers and make them very, very sad because Archers can't deal damage, I said it, I'm sorry. If we look here on floor 1, I did one run as Archer, and I was in the top 9.1% of damage in the one run I did with Archer, and this was, of course, with a group of 5. Also, we were speedrunning it a bit, and we're number 271 for fastest time with an S, which I'm happy about. But that was not when I was playing Archer. I think I was playing Berserk for that, because we had another mage in the party as well. Before we move on, we have to talk about one weapon in particular that I have skipped. And the reason this is primarily because it's probably going to be nerfed. But right now, it is certainly the best mage weapon. And it's what I would call the primarily ability-based weapon, similar to the Bonzo Staff, although you can use it for offensive purposes. Typically, the Bonzo Staff is better used just using mana unless you don't have any. Just typically. I mean, you want to click as well, but basically you're always using your balloons, so you're clicking and firing balloons at the same time. So, typically you're doing both at the same time anyways. But, there is another weapon. There is a weapon that is a little bit broken right now. It's very, very good for Mage, and it's the Frozen Scythe. In particular, if you put Ultimate Wise 5 on it, which, if you're gonna go for a Frozen Scythe, you should put Ultimate Wise 5 on it. I mean, you could put 4. I mean, it'd just be slightly worse. But the Frozen Scythe is insanely good right now. As you can see, shooting one bolt deals 22,000 damage and slows enemies hit for 5 seconds with a mana cost of 25. My Bonzo Staff, Ultimate Wise 4, shoots balloons that create a large explosion on impact, dealing up to 6,715 damage with a mana cost of 60, more than double. With Ultimate Wise 5, it would be exactly double. Now, here's the thing. It's probably going to be nerfed because that's a lot of damage. Although, I believe that damage increases with intelligence, so I have a good amount of intelligence on right now. I wonder if I hold my Bonzo Staff, if that damage would go up. This is kind of a test. Yes, so it went up to 28,560, if I'm not mistaken. Is my brain might be like, ducked. Okay, yeah, so it did go up. It went up a good amount. I'm not exactly, did I say 28,560? I'm not sure. It went up a good amount when I held my Bonzo staff though. So your damage based on your frozen scythe will go up based on your intelligence. Same with the Bonzo staff, your damage will increase if you have higher intelligence, which inside dungeons you will have higher intelligence because the Bonzo staff will give you even more, and also your armor set, depending on what you're wearing, can give you more as well. Anyways, I just wanted to clear it up. That's why I didn't talk about Frozen Scythe though, because it's so good that it's probably going to be nerfed. If it's not, it's about 20 mil right now to get a Frozen Scythe. And it will probably stay there if it doesn't get nerfed. It might go down a bit, but if it doesn't get nerfed, I don't think it will go down, but it's very good right now. So we'll see. Maybe they'll keep it. Maybe they won't. We'll see. But yeah, that's why I didn't mention that before. So now that we've gone over some suggested armor sets for playing Mage, I want to go ahead and review some games that I've played. I've recorded them priorhand so that we can look back and see some specific moments. Then there's certain things I did that I would suggest doing if you're playing Mage yourself. Even if you don't have a Bonzo staff or you don't have the best sword in the world, this can be pretty helpful. And you don't need the best gear in the world to beat floor 3. You don't. It helps, for sure. It makes it a lot easier. You will fail a lot less often. But if you have the skill, you have a good team, you work together with a healer and a tank and probably 2 mages, or maybe even 3 mages and no berserker and archer, you can definitely beat floor 3. You will need okay stuff. Like, I'm not saying you can do it with an aspect of the end. You probably can't. But if you have an aspect of the dragons or a pigment sword or something like that, that will be good enough if you have a good enough strategy. Anyways, let's go ahead and review some of these moments. So this very first clip is of my team fighting a Shadow Assassin, actually 2, but we're focusing on the first Shadow Assassin fight for now, because we actually managed to get one of the Shadow Assassins to leave us alone while we killed the other, which helped out a ton because we can have all of our DPS going into one Shadow Assassin versus 2. And you may notice one of the key things here. We have a tank, 2 mages, and a healer. And I'll show you where our archer is in a second, but this is what archers essentially have to do during these kinds of situations, because they're gonna die. They can't, well, okay, they can either run or they can hide, because if they try to fight with, like, if they try to get off bow shots, the Shadow Assassin will teleport to you and, like, 3-shot you. So that's why you have to constantly be running around, and in particular, running in straight lines is great, because then with stuff like Bonzo's Mask and Mage abilities, like just straight up the Mage ability to shoot, you can actually kind of pre-aim them a lot easier than if they're going in a circle, because then you have to work on more of a horizontal axis and not just a vertical axis. You have a much larger horizontal axis that you have to worry about to aim for. Anyways, this fight went fairly well. You'll notice my Bonzo's Mask saved my life at the end, because I was about to die, and oh, Bonzo's Mask completely saves me. That's why Bonzo's Mask is very nice. I mean, yeah, it literally just saves your life. Also, it has pretty good stats as well, so it's definitely not a bad helmet to get. And there's our archer. Drap, I'm sorry. But that actually happened. Alright, so this next clip is from the same run, but a little bit further on, so we do have some blessings here, and it went a lot cleaner. The blessings help a lot. Also, if you'll notice, the space we're in, a lot better. There's just like a straight hallway somewhat that we can run back and forth on, which means I can pre-aim my balloons a lot easier, and just in general, all the mage attacks can be pre-aimed better, and that's about it. It went really clean. This is exactly how these fights should go. You just got all your DPS going straight into him, and it lasts about 30 seconds if you do it correctly. This is pretty much the exact example of how you should do this situation. But it is harder to do at the beginning of runs, I will admit. That is definitely the biggest test. So this clip is essentially what floor 1 looks like with the Bonzo staff as a mage. You kind of just literally run through everything. Like, literally, you don't stop sprinting and just spam the ability for Bonzo's staff and just left click a bit and you're killing everything. Even the Lost Adventurers, they're no match. It's 1v1 on the Lost Adventurers. Bonzo's staff is very, very nice on floor 1, and you'll see just these guys just get mopped up. So that's how you do floor 1 with a Bonzo staff. Without a Bonzo staff, if you're having a lesser weapon, you may want to like try and corner peek, like jiggle peek out of a corner and then hide again immediately. That can work. with lesser weapons, and is kind of how archers make their living. But do keep in mind with Mage, you have to be around 15 blocks to have full damage, so that you can't do it from insanely far away, whereas archers, kind of can. But besides that, that's about it. So let's go on to the next one that's not just a murder fest. So this last clip is from a Scarf fight, so floor 2, the final boss on floor 2. So in this fight, it does not go perfectly, but I think I played it fairly well as a mage. I did my best to keep away from the warrior. So what you want to do is have as much distance as possible from the warrior and deal your damage from as much of a distance as possible. You don't want to be right on top of things if you don't have to be, because they can just jump right on top of you, particularly the warrior. And of course, we all pile on the priest at first, because that's what you need to do. If you don't kill the priest, you can't kill the other stuff. Well, you can, it's just harder to kill the other stuff. So you want to kill the priest first, typically, and then you can kill the warrior, typically, and then you can worry about everything else after that. And this fight went fairly well for us. There were a couple hiccups, like a couple of the team members died, but we pulled it out in the end. Yeah, it worked out fairly decent. I liked my positioning for when the warrior came for me. I did well at teleporting away, and primarily, yeah, just like my positioning and awareness of the warrior primarily is the main one you have to worry about. Scarf a little bit, but you don't really have to worry too much about Scarf. Anyways, guys, hope y'all enjoy the massive lag spike as Scarf murders my teammates and throws me halfway across the room to almost murder me as well. It was an interesting lag spike. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed today's video, and I'll keep the fight going until the end so you can see how it ends. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace, guys.